This video is sponsored by Skillshare. The first 1,000 people who use the link in my description will receive a 1-month free trial to Skillshare Premium. Stick around to the end to learn more.
You know, a year ago, I hadn't even heard of this next band. But now, I can't imagine life without them. They are more important to me than the very air that I breathe. They bring meaning and substance to our miserable, wretched lives, a sense of purpose to our very existence on this planet. And woe to any soul that dares to stand in their way. Ladies and gentlemen, Evanescence!
At the turn of the century, nu metal was riding high. Linkin Park, Limp Bizkit, Korn and Papa Roach were all selling millions of records. And angry boys rapping over helmet riffage and record scratches were the order of the day. Testosterone in mainstream rock was at an all-time high. Emerging in 2003, Evanescence offered a twist on the format. At first derisively seen as merely Linkin Park with a chick, Evanescence had the chunky guitars and electronica flourishes, but revitalized with gothic overtones, orchestral grandeur, and a unique feminine point of view in vocalist Amy Lee. But the music industry men, not knowing how to sell a female-fronted metal group, planned to make Evanescence sound more like everyone else. This is the story of the battles and compromises behind Bring Me to Life. The story of Evanescence starts with vocalist-pianist Amy Lee. Born in Riverside, California, her family moved around a lot. By the age of 13, she had settled in Little Rock, Arkansas, where she had few friends. But she had her music. Inspired by the film Amadeus, Lee had taken up classical piano at the age of 9. Through her teenagehood, her tastes had shifted to include Soundgarden, The Smashing Pumpkins, Nine Inch Nails, Björk, and Tori Amos.
Why do we crucify ourselves every day?
With limited social life, she stayed at home and started writing her own songs. Her mother, though, was concerned by her initial experiments in songwriting. She was like, "What are you singing?" And I read her some lyrics, and she said, "I wonder if you need to talk to somebody." When we had that talk, I thought about taking antidepressants, but I think that takes your soul away. I remember thinking that if I made that choice, then I wouldn't be an artist anymore, because I wouldn't be able to feel anything. According to legend, while attending a summer church camp in 1994, Lee had been alone playing the opening piano run of Meatloaf's "I'd Do Anything for Love, but I Won't Do That." And caught the attention of guitarist and future songwriting partner Ben Moody. After striking up a friendship, they wrote angsty alt-rock songs together throughout their teens. Moody pushed for a word he found in the dictionary to use as their name. Evanescence, noun, the condition of lasting for only a short time, then disappearing quickly and being forgotten. Aside from the various death metal acts that Moody appreciated, Little Rock had little in the way of an active music scene. So their first live performances were in local coffee shops and at church-organized youth events. They self-released their first EP in 1998 with a limited run of 100 CDRs. Several more demo EPs over the next 2 years would build Evanescence's profile within Arkansas, joined by additional member David Hodges. In 2000, the fledgling group traveled to Memphis to record a full-length demo, Origin. Primitive forms of future Fallen tracks, Imaginary and Whisper, featured on the demo. While the Origin variant of My Immortal became the version used on Fallen, just with added orchestration, much to Lee's displeasure.
When you cried, I'd wipe away all of your tears.
It's really hard for me to listen to the album version, because we did it 2 years ago. It was just me and guitarist Ben, and I've grown so much as a performer since then. It's not even a real piano. And the sound quality is bad because we had to break into the studio to record it late at night when no one was around because we couldn't afford a real session. Producer Pete Matthews heard this demo and brought it to Wind Up Records, where Evanescence were signed. Though not officially a Christian rock label, they had previously had massive success with their spiritually themed Creed, and Evanescence's theologically inclined music would fit right in. After getting the deal, Lee quit school and the label set the band up in Los Angeles. For the next 2 years, they worked on refining their sound and writing songs for what would become their debut album. But the powers that be weren't fully sold on the current configuration of Evanescence. In early 2002, their label heard what Lee, Moody and Hodges had been writing and decided that epic, atmospheric goth metal wasn't something they felt confident that they could sell. They were concerned that with Lee as the sole vocalist, rock fans would be put off. The last new female-fronted rock act that had done well on radio was during the 3-year chart reign of No Doubt, beginning in 1995, and Evanescence were No Doubt. So Wind Up set an ultimatum. Either they employ a full-time male rap vocalist to duet on their songs, or the label would have to give Evanescence the boot. It was presented to me as, you're a girl singing in a rock band. There's nothing else like that out there. Nobody's going to listen to you. You need a guy to come in and sing backup for it to be successful. After weighing up if it was worth changing their whole band dynamic and sound for a chance to record their debut album, Evanescence refused and were dropped. A few weeks after returning to Little Rock, their dreams dashed. Wind Up came crawling back. They had a major film soundtrack opportunity for the band that they would be perfect for, 2003's Daredevil. But for that one song, they would need the male vocalist. Getting that second chance, they accepted and drafted in guest vocalist Paul McCoy, frontman of Christian rock outfit 12 Stones. The song they chose was Bring Me to Life, never written with additional vocals in mind.
Wake me up inside, wake me up inside, call my name and save me from the dark.
The demos for the song even lacked the climactic cool response, merely being an instrumental break instead. It was something that we had to do. It was a concession we had to make for the label. But at least when we did it, I wrote the part. We took a lot of care in creating it the way that we wanted it to be. And I worked with Paul to get it the way that we still felt fit our band. For it to be included on the Daredevil soundtrack, Bring Me to Life was recorded before the album sessions proper at Ocean Studios in Burbank, California. Being that Evanescence wasn't yet a full band, session musicians filled in for the recording. In particular, Vandal's drummer Josh Freese. The album was produced by David Fortman, former guitarist of Ugly Kid Joe, and he had been the one to suggest Paul McCoy, as Fortman had previously co-produced 12 Stones' first album. Fortman was impressed by Evanescence's epic, sweeping symphonic metal sound. One of the greatest parts of this record was the band's vision and their dream about it being theatrical and like a movie soundtrack. I think that gives it a special emotion really. Every song takes you through this journey, inspiring the dark imagery and gothic vibe of the lyrics. A Lot of Fallen was written about a relationship that Lee had been in at the time. I went through an abusive relationship for 3 years. It's weird to stay in an abusive relationship for so long, but that's the way abusive relationships are. I guess sometimes my music makes me hang on longer, because it makes me feel like I'm getting my feelings out somehow, so I don't actually have to move on. After I recorded those songs, I was listening to my own words on Going Under. When he goes to the chorus, what I would have loved to hear myself sing is, I'm leaving, and I'm not going to put up with this anymore. But instead, the line is, I'm going under, drowning in you. And I was thinking to myself, you know what you need to do, and you're not doing it. Bring Me to Life was inspired by a conversation she had with a friend of a friend, who instantly saw that she was in a bad place emotionally. even though she was trying to hide it. He sat across from me when we went to reserve a table, and he just looked at me dead in the eye and said, "Are you happy?" And it shocked my heart. And I looked down and had just started making up excuses. I choked on my words because I felt I was completely outwardly acting normal, but inside, in a lot of turmoil. And I felt like he could just see straight into my soul. That inspired the whole song.
How can you see into my eyes like open doors?
Its chorus is a desperate cry to be shaken from this situation, this fake happiness that she has resigned herself to.
Wake me up inside. Wake me up inside.
One day something happens that wakes you up and makes you realize that there's more to life than just feeling nothing, feeling numb. It's as if you've never felt before, and just realize there's this whole world of emotion or meaning that you've never seen before. And it's just like, wow, I've been asleep all this time. Bring Me to Life would be used in a training montage in Daredevil, featuring the character Elektra, and as such it would be the public's first exposure to Evanescence. But Lee didn't want it to be their first single. She feared that the rap element that isn't present elsewhere in their work would give an incorrect first impression of the band's sound. It was one of our big early struggles, that big rap thing. Having that male vocalist on our first song to me was a lost battle in a lot of ways. That's confusing, like, what is this band? That really worried me, being our first song. I didn't want it to be. I wanted it to be going under. Amongst this, representatives from the label were suggesting that Lee might want to lose 10 to 15 pounds and flaunt her sexuality more. Suggestions she ignored. Even with their interference, the label was sure that Evanescence would live up to their name, disappearing quickly and soon forgotten. Daredevil got its worldwide release in February 2003, with its soundtrack album being released a week beforehand. Having no faith in Evanescence as a moneymaker, Bring Me to Life would end up as the fourth single released. After forgettable but more in tune with the zeitgeist non-hits, Won't Back Down by Fuel, Caught in the Rain by Revis, and For You by The Calling. Due to Wind-Up's hesitance, they only released copies of Bring Me to Life to a select handful of modern rock alternative stations to test if anyone would want to listen to this Evanescence. The old marketing adage is that often the consumer doesn't know what it wants until it is shown to them. The success of Evanescence was very much that. Epic widescreen orchestration, Lee's operatic yet vulnerable vocal, and Moody's big metallic guitars was a combination that the mainstream hadn't heard before. But listeners loved it and flooded the stations with requests for Bring Me to Life. All my favourite artists don't sound like anything else around them that came out at the same time. It's not a copy, it's something truly pure. And I felt like those things that made us unique were the things about us that could make us great. But that, in the beginning, was exactly the opposite idea of the Suits. They want something safe, they want something that's been done before. So it was definitely a great feeling when we could prove them wrong and that we had a #1 hit. Bring Me to Life was released as a single on the 22nd of April 2003. In the US, it topped the modern rock chart, and after 13 weeks on the Billboard Hot 100, it peaked at number 5, alongside the likes of 50 Cent, Sean Paul, and Justin Timberlake. But it also got to number 1 in the UK charts. And stayed there for 4 weeks, denying the fast food rockers the top spot. As well as this, Bring Me to Life went top 5 in 16 other countries. With their first single, and without having toured outside the US, Evanescence had gone straight to headliner status, the world over. We had fans in countries we had never been to, because they had the soundtrack, and they heard it on the radio, so it started blowing up all over the world, and then we had a reason to tour all over the world. Fallen had been released at the beginning of March, but sales didn't pick up until after the success of Bring Me to Life, and follow-up singles Going Under, My Immortal, and Everybody's Fool. Many music fans who heard Evanescence, and specifically Lee's songs about tainted love, spiritual uncertainty and death, knew that this was their band, and a devoted following formed. By the end of the year, Fallen had gone multiple times platinum, and Evanescence had won Grammys for Best New Artist and Best Hard Rock Performance for Bring Me to Life. But they also faced boycotts from Christian groups, and Ben Moody had left the group amongst interband tension, their arduous world tour exacerbating the already fracturing relationship between the band's core songwriters. I don't hate Ben, I just don't ever want to speak to him again. He was truly kind of poisonous. Some people just aren't good for you. It doesn't mean they're Satan, but you can't have them in your life. Evanescence have since released 4 more studio albums. While none were as commercially successful as Fallen, because with 17 million copies sold, few are, they were more in tune with Lee's vision for Evanescence, and not whatever an industry suit thinks might sell. Their second LP, The Open Door, still managed to sell 5 million copies, without McCoy providing a verse to make them sound more like Linkin Park. Though they were lumped in with nu metal, Evanescence never truly fit with the genre. Kerrang at the time chanced assigning them the term New Goth, but again, Evanescence were just Evanescence. Their success though opened the doors for other bands. Evanescence introduced the UK and US to female-led symphonic metal in a big way, and while groups like Lacuna Coil, Within Temptation and Nightwish had already been popular in mainland Europe, they got launched into the worldwide metal community in the aftermath of Fallen. Additionally, having Lee exist in the metal space, where for the most part there hadn't been a whole lot of female role models, it inspired the next generation of metal vocalists, said Lizzie Hale of Hailstorm. Amy embodied and represented all the girls that were just like me. She was and is a voice for our generation. Up until her, I had to reach back to my parents' generation of women in rock for inspiration. When Amy broke the mold, I knew the door was wide open for all of us to walk through. As well as Hailstorm, New Year's Day and The Pretty Reckless, Rina Sawayama has cited Evanescence as an influence on the pop metal fusion of her debut album. Evanescence parted ways with Wind Up in 2014, Lee finally free to pursue her music the way she wanted. In 2017, she re-recorded an album's worth of her songs in a more full, cinematic, non-metallic style. This meant that finally, Bring Me to Life, her song about her experiences, existed in a form that was fully her vision, without rapping or Moody's guitar.
Wake me up inside. Wake me up inside.
Bring Me to Life is new to me again after 15 years. It's difficult to explain how good that makes me feel, having the chance to incorporate things I've heard in my head throughout that long period of time. Nuances from the way I sing it live, just pouring the weight and perspective of the life I've lived, now back into that route. It's pure satisfaction.
Save me from the nothing I've become.
Bring Me to Life was one of the last massive songs from metal's short-lived gatecrashing of the pop charts. Its 4 weeks at number 1 has only recently been equaled by another rock guitar driven song, with Olivia Rodrigo's Good For You managing 5 weeks at number 1 in June 2021.
Well, good for you, you look happy and healthy, not me, if you ever cared to ask.
Just to give you an idea of how long it's been since we've had such a rock mega hit, Rodrigo was born the week after Daredevil came to cinema. Yeah. Though seen as a compromise at the time, Bring Me to Life gave Evanescence the opportunity to prove their label wrong, showing that a female-fronted metal band could not only succeed, but become one of the best-selling rock acts of the millennium, instead of disappearing, becoming nothing. Evanescence awakened a new audience to the heavier side of music. That's not bad for a soundtrack tie-in. Have you become stuck in a rut? Not quite sure what you're doing with your life? You want to change, but you don't know where to start? Well then, Skillshare may be the service for you. Skillshare is an online learning community for anyone who wants to learn something new, where millions have come together to take their next step in their creative journey. This month I watched Self-Care Through Creativity, Turn Your Anxiety into Art. In it, Sarah Beth Morgan leads you through how to turn your inner struggles into art you can be proud of. But maybe you want to go with your gut feeling more when making food. With Julie Yoon's Kitchen Confidence, practical tips for cooking with intuition, that is also an option. Today is the perfect time to do that thing you always wanted to do. The first 1,000 people who use the link in my description will receive a 1-month free trial to Skillshare Premium. So click that link, acquire a new skill, and become a better you. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, subscribe, and hit that bell. If you really like the videos I'm making, maybe you should check out my Patreon. There's plenty of cool rewards, like polls to decide future videos, and watching new videos early. Thanks to all that support me. And I'll see you in 2 weeks for the next New British Canon.